Hey, big man. What are you doing? Playing a little Game Boy Advance, huh? Looks like a little bit of Dragon Ball Z Supersonic Warriors. Not a bad game, man. Freaking stellar for its time. Let me play. Let me play! Let me play, you son of a bitch! Ah! Look, I was a damn fool in the past. I got rid of my Game Boy like an ignorant cuck. Do you know how much these go for nowadays? Do you? Oh, really not that much. Looking back, there was a lot of handheld Dragon Ball Z games. I feel like I've played so many. Hey, big man. How's about you and me go back and play some of the best Dragon Ball Z handheld games out there, huh? You with me? Right. But how do we play them? Wait! I've got it! Emulation! Yeah! Love me some Dragon Ball Z games. And now you're telling me that I can take it on the go? That's... What the fuck? Let me tell you, when Xenoverse 2 and Dragon Ball FighterZ came to the Switch, I rushed to my sugar mommy, begging and pleading, please buy me these, oh please won't you? I'm gonna let all you homies out there know, she did indeed buy them. He done it! It's no secret I'm a big Dragon Ball Z fan. It was one of my first couple videos I made on this channel. You wanna know why? Because Dragon Ball Z has been there for me, good times and bad. I remember my first Dragon Ball Z game on handheld I had was a 2-pack, including the Legacy of Goku 1 and 2. And I played those games over and over. And later on in life, I played games like Dragon Ball Z Extreme Butoden on the 3DS and Dragon Ball Z Shin Budokai on the PSP. But which ones are the best? Well, that's what we're gonna figure out. Because I'm an asshole on the internet with an opinion, so who better to trust this decision than me? And just as a side note, I'm not going to include any console games that made it to Switch. I know, it gets rid of fighters, but just hear me out, I've got some good ones. So here is the top 5 best Dragon Ball Z handhelds. Number 5, Dragon Ball Z Attack of the Saiyans. If you ever thought the Saiyan saga was too short, Attack of the Saiyans politely disagrees and stretches it into a full-length RPG. Somehow the game finds time to give you side quests, random enemies, and even a reason to care about fights that aren't just Goku versus Vegeta. It's basically the anime's what-if filler episodes, but good experiment. The turn-based combat is surprisingly deep with flashy team attacks and character-specific moves that actually make Krillin feel useful for once. Tien gets to shine, Yamcha isn't instantly written off, and even Piccolo feels more tactical than just spamming Special Beam Cannon. By the time the Saiyans finally land, you actually feel like you've trained for the fight rather than just waited around for a plot to happen. The sprites look fantastic for the DS, the music fits perfectly, and the battles have real weight despite the old school format. Sure, the grinding can drag, and yes, random wolves attacking the Z fighter is a little silly in a world with planet-busting warriors, but it all adds to the charm. It's not the flashiest Dragon Ball Z game, but Attack of the Saiyans earns number 5 for turning a short arc into a surprisingly full and satisfying adventure. Also gave Yamcha a little dignity, which might be the rarest accomplishment in the entire franchise. Number 4, Dragon Ball Advanced Adventure. If you ever wanted to play through the original Dragon Ball story but with pixel art so charming it can melt the Red Ribbon Army's cold robotic hearts, Advanced Adventure is the game for you. From chasing after the Dragon Balls with Bulma to knocking Mercenary Town the next week, all in a slick side-scrolling beat-em-up that feels way more fun than it has any right to be. The combat is fast, responsive, and just the right mix of button-mashy chaos and actual strategy. You can chain combos, knock enemies across the screen, and even face off in those one-on-one duels that basically turn into a tiny fighting game matches inside your adventure. It's like the developers couldn't decide whether to make an action platformer or a fighter, so they just said yes. The story mode doesn't just breeze through either. It covers a huge chunk of Goku's childhood, something most Dragon Ball Z games completely ignore, and it nails the lighthearted tone while still delivering some seriously tough battles. The sprite work and animations are top-notch for the Game Boy Advance, giving every character from Yamcha to King Piccolo a surprising amount of personality. It's not the longest game, and once you've beaten it, you'll wish there was more, but what's there is pure gold. That's why it lands at number 4. It's not just a great Dragon Ball game, it's one of the best reasons to dust off a Game Boy Advance and remember when Goku's biggest concern was dinner and not galaxy-destroying gods. This game is living proof that the PSP was secretly a Dragon Ball Z machine. Shin Budokai Another Road takes the smooth, flashy combat from the first Shin Budokai and cranks it up, making every fight feel like you're one button mash away from blowing a hole in the ozone layer. On handheld, it felt amazing, fast, fluid, and loaded with enough beam clashes to make your thumbs cry. But let's talk about that story mode. Future Trunks gets his own adventure, hopping timelines to fight resurrected villains, and on paper, that sounds incredible. In practice, it plays out like someone shuffled a deck of Dragon Ball Z plot cards and just rolled with whatever came up. One second you're fighting Cell, the next you're facing off against Dabura again, and the dialogue often felt like filler written on the bus ride to work. It's not unplayable, but it definitely makes you wish they'd hired Toriyama to at least doodle a napkin outline. Then there's the AI. Calling it tough is an understatement. Sometimes it feels like your computer is reading your inputs before you even press them. You'll be in the middle of a combo and suddenly the AI decides it's Ultra Instinct Goku punishing you for daring to exist. It can be brutal, but in a way that also makes winning a fight feel way more satisfying, like you actually earned it instead of just spamming Kamehameha until the health bar disappeared. Despite the rough story and punishing AI, Another Road still lands at number 3 because the gameplay itself is just that damn good. It's fast, it's responsive, and it delivers the kind of Dragon Ball Z action that made you forget you were playing it on a tiny handheld screen. Plus, it gave Future Trunks his own spotlight, even if the plot felt like it was a little stitched together with duct tape. Number 2, Dragon Ball Z Extreme Butoden. This one doesn't get talked about nearly enough, but Extreme Butoden was basically the test run for what would later become Dragon Ball FighterZ. Think of it as the scrappy little cousin who shows up to family gatherings with tons of energy, but no one gives enough credit. On the 3DS, it was an absolute blast. The sprites are gorgeous, seriously. Some of the best 2D Dragon Ball art ever put in a game. Every punch, kick, and ki blast has that crisp, hand-drawn look that makes you want to pause mid-fight just to admire it. The combat system is simple on the surface, but chaining combos together feels smooth and satisfying. And calling in assist characters gave fights a chaotic tag team flavor that was a clear step toward what fighters perfected later. The roster is huge, with tons of playable fighters and even more support characters than you could summon for a quick attack. Sure, not every character gets full movesets, but the sheer variety made every match feel fresh. What makes it land at the number 2 is that it dared to prove a traditional 2D Dragon Ball fighter could still work in the modern era. Without Extreme Butoden laying the groundwork, we probably don't get fighters. At least not the same form. It's like the game walks so fighters could sprint into esports glory. In short, it's flashy, it's fun, it's underrated, and it's quietly set the stage for one of the greatest Dragon Ball Z games ever. That's number 2 spot if I've ever seen one. And at number 1, Dragon Ball Z Boost Fury. Here it is, the crown jewel of handheld Dragon Ball games. Boost Fury takes everything that worked in Legacy of Goku 2, polishes it up, and delivers a game that quietly, almost sneakily, became one of the best Dragon Ball Z games ever made. People talk about Budokai, they talk about fighters, but ask anyone who owned a Game Boy Advance and they'll tell you, this one was special. The action RPG gameplay is deceptively deep. You're not just mashing buttons, you're managing stats, equipping items, and actually thinking about how to build your character. Want Goku to hit harder than a truck? Stack strength. Want Vegeta to be a tank? Pump vitality. It's basically Dragon Ball meets Diablo, and instead of fighting demons in hell, you're fighting Babidi's goons in the desert. The story mode covers the entire Buu saga, which was no small feat. From Gohan's high school days to Goku's final spirit bomb, it's all there, with plenty of side content sprinkled in. The pacing is surprisingly strong for a handheld title, and by the time you reach the final showdown with Kid Buu, it actually feels like an epic journey rather than just another quick retelling. What really makes it shine though is the little details. Exploring towns, finding secrets, leveling up characters, it all feels rewarding in a way most Dragon Ball Z games never attempt. Instead of just reenacting big fights, Boost Fury makes you live in that world for a while, and honestly, that's what makes it timeless. It's not the flashiest Dragon Ball Z game, but it doesn't need to be. It's balanced, it's fun, and it's surprisingly replayable. That's why it earns the number 1 spot, because beneath its simple Game Boy Advance packaging, Boost Fury is one of the best Dragon Ball Z games ever made, and one that still holds up today. So there you have it, the top 5 Dragon Ball games that prove this franchise has given us way more than just fighters. From RPGs that stretched sagas into epic adventures, to handheld brawlers that laid the groundwork for modern classics. Each one brought something unique to the table. Dragon Ball's game history is just as wild and varied as the anime itself. But if there's one thing these 5 titles show, it's that the best Dragon Ball games don't just retell the story, they make you live it.